the early 13th century, Baghdad was not just a powerful city, it was one of the most important centers of civilization in the entire world. Founded in 762 AD by the Abbasid Caliphate, it had grown over centuries into a symbol of knowledge, wealth, and cultural achievement. While many regions of Europe were still fragmented and recovering from instability, Baghdad stood as a beacon of intellectual and economic strength. At its height, the city was home to hundreds of thousands of people, possibly over 1 million according to some estimates. Its location along major trade routes made it a central hub connecting east and west. Merchants brought silk from China, spices from India, gold from Africa, and ideas from every corner of the known world. But what truly made Baghdad unique was not just its wealth, it was its mind. The city was home to the famous Beit al-Hikmah, or the House of Wisdom. This institution became one of the greatest centers of learning in history. Scholars translated ancient Greek texts by Aristotle, Plato, and Hippocrates into Arabic. They preserved knowledge that might otherwise have been lost forever. But they did more than preserve, they expanded it. Mathematicians developed algebra. Astronomers mapped the stars with remarkable accuracy. Doctors wrote detailed medical texts used for centuries. Baghdad was not just advanced, it was ahead of its time. The streets of the city reflected this prosperity. Markets were busy and full of goods. Mosques and libraries stood as symbols of knowledge and faith. Water systems, architecture, and urban planning were far more sophisticated than many other cities of the era. For generations, Baghdad had survived wars and internal conflicts. Its rulers believed in its strength. Its people believed in its future. But far beyond its walls, a new power had emerged: the Mongols. Originally a collection of nomadic tribes from the steppes of Central Asia, they were united under Genghis Khan in the early 13th century. What followed was one of the most rapid and devastating expansions in human history. After Genghis Khan's death in 1227, the empire did not weaken, it expanded even further. His descendants continued the conquests, pushing into China, Persia, and Eastern Europe. By the 1250s, the Mongols had already destroyed entire cities across Asia and the Middle East. Places that once flourished were reduced to ashes. Populations were wiped out. Resistance often meant total destruction. And yet, despite all of this, Baghdad did not fully prepare. The Abbasid Caliph at the time, al-Mustasim, believed that Baghdad's status as a major Islamic center would protect it. He assumed that diplomacy or reputation would be enough to prevent disaster. This assumption would prove fatal, because the Mongols were not coming for negotiation. They were coming for domination. And Baghdad was now directly in their path. In 1257, Hulagu Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan, was ordered to expand Mongol control into the Middle East. His mission was clear: eliminate any power that could challenge Mongol authority. Baghdad, as the center of the Abbasid Caliphate, became a primary target. Hulagu did not march alone. He commanded a massive, highly organized army composed of Mongol warriors, allied forces, and engineers skilled in siege warfare. This was not a simple raid. It was a calculated campaign designed to completely break one of the most important cities in the world. Before attacking, Hulagu sent a message to the Caliph. He demanded submission. He demanded that Baghdad surrender peacefully and accept Mongol rule. But the Caliph refused. Whether out of pride, miscalculation, or a belief in divine protection, he chose not to comply. Worse still, he failed to properly prepare for the siege that was about to begin. This decision sealed the fate of the city. In January 1258, the Mongol army arrived and surrounded Baghdad from multiple directions. They established control over key routes, cutting off supplies and preventing any escape. The city was now completely isolated. The siege began almost immediately. The Mongols used advanced siege weapons, including massive catapults capable of launching stones and incendiary projectiles over long distances. These machines pounded the city's walls day after day. Defenders tried to resist. Soldiers stood on the walls, firing arrows and attempting to repel the attackers. But they were outmatched. The Mongols were disciplined, experienced, and relentless. They adapted quickly to any resistance. They coordinated attacks with precision. They showed no signs of stopping. Within days, the outer defenses began to weaken. Food shortages started to affect the population. Fear spread among civilians. Confidence turned into panic. The caliph attempted to negotiate, but it was too late. Hulagu no longer trusted him. The opportunity for peace had passed. By early February, Mongol forces breached the city's defenses. The walls that had protected Baghdad for centuries were no longer enough. The city was now open, and what followed would become one of the darkest moments in history. When the Mongol army entered Baghdad in February 1258, the conquest quickly turned into devastation. What had once been a thriving center of civilization became a place of destruction, fear, and death. The Mongols did not treat this as a normal occupation. They treated it as an example. For several days, the city was subjected to systematic destruction. Buildings were burned, infrastructure was destroyed, and large portions of the population were killed. Historical sources vary in their estimates, but many agree that the loss of life was immense. The violence was not random. It was deliberate. The Mongols intended to send a message to the rest of the world. Resistance would not be tolerated. One of the greatest losses was the destruction of Baghdad's intellectual institutions. The House of Wisdom, which had stood for centuries as a symbol of learning, was destroyed. Books and manuscripts, many of which contained knowledge collected over generations, were lost forever. According to historical accounts, so many books were thrown into the Tigris River that the water darkened from the ink. While some details may be exaggerated, there is no doubt that an enormous amount of knowledge disappeared during this event. The Caliph al-Musta'sim was captured. His fate marked the end of the Abbasid Caliphate's political power in Baghdad. With his death, a dynasty that had ruled for centuries came to an abrupt end. The city itself was left in ruins. Its population had been drastically reduced. Its infrastructure was damaged. Its role as the center of the Islamic world was effectively over. The fall of Baghdad was not just a local disaster. It had global consequences. Trade routes were disrupted. Scholarly activity declined. Political power in the region shifted dramatically. For many historians, this event represents the end of the Islamic Golden Age, a period of remarkable scientific, cultural, and intellectual achievement. Baghdad would eventually recover in later centuries, but it would never return to the level of influence it once had. The events of 1258 serve as a powerful reminder. No matter how advanced a civilization may seem, no matter how strong its walls are, it can still fall. And when it does, the loss is felt not just by one city, but by the entire world.